Our source kicks off by giving us a fantastic overview. It looks at the biggest discussions in ethics over nearly a decade, specifically from 2015 to 2024. It's kind of like a roadmap, isn't it? Showing us where the most crucial ethical conversations have been happening. Our sources highlight that a major focus, maybe the biggest, has been on the ethical ideas of thinkers. This category saw 30 questions asked during this period. Now, this isn't just about memorizing names from history, right? It's about understanding the core philosophies and frameworks these, well, brilliant minds introduced. Think of figures like Mahatma Gandhi, a global icon of nonviolent resistance, or ancient philosophers like Aristotle, who laid foundations for understanding virtue. Their ideas on justice, duty, human well-being, they aren't just dusty old texts. They provide timeless tools for understanding and, maybe, solving today's ethical challenges. Why do you think understanding these foundational thinkers remains so crucial for how we think about ethics even now?
Well, it's quite simple, really, when you think about it. Understanding these historical thinkers shows us that many of the ethical problems we face today aren't entirely new. They often have roots in debates that have been going on for centuries. For example, that constant tension between individual rights and what's best for the community as a whole, that's a theme explored by thinkers like John Locke or Jean-Jacques Rousseau hundreds of years ago. So by knowing their arguments, we gain a much richer, more nuanced perspective, and we kind of avoid the trap of constantly feeling like we're reinventing the wheel. It gives us a sense of the long journey of ethical thought and how these core principles can still light our way.
That makes perfect sense. These historical insights give us a lens, like a frame of reference, and very closely behind that, our sources show ethics in public administration with 27 questions. This is a critical area, isn't it? I mean, public service is constantly grappling with huge ethical challenges, simply because the decisions made affect millions of lives. We're talking about immense pressure, limited resources, often many conflicting interests, from ensuring fairness in how policies are carried out to preventing corruption. The ethical principles here are really all about integrity, treating everyone fairly, and serving the public good above all else. Why is this domain, public administration, such a constant source of ethical dilemmas and discussions?
Well, public administration isn't just about following a rule book. It's about applying those rules ethically in, well, messy, real-world human situations. Civil servants deal with significant power and discretion, and they're entrusted with the public's trust. It's a big responsibility. So when public servants act unethically, it directly harms citizens, it erodes trust in government, and it can even weaken democratic institutions. Therefore, continuously examining and reinforcing ethical principles in this area is absolutely essential for any society that wants to be fair and function well. It's where ethical theories really meet the often complicated reality of governing.
Right, the messy reality. Okay, next up, we have ethics and human interface with 22 questions. This theme really hits close to home because it's all about our everyday lives, isn't it? It explores how ethics influences our personal interactions, our relationships, the unwritten rules that shape how we behave in society. It's about things like empathy, compassion, personal responsibility, and simply how we treat each other in our families, communities, workplaces. How do you see this connecting to our daily lives, maybe beyond just those big, dramatic ethical dilemmas we sometimes hear about?
Think about it this way. Our individual ethical choices, even the small ones, they collectively weave the moral fabric of society. Ethics and human interface is about those, micro-level decisions that add up. It's about how you choose to communicate with a neighbor, how you respond to someone in need, whether you keep a promise, or even how you behave in online discussions, right? These individual choices reflect and reinforce broader societal norms. So when we consistently act with integrity and empathy in our daily lives, we're actively contributing to a more ethical, more humane world around us. It starts small.
And very closely related to that, ethics and governance, accountability, and transparency accounted for 21 questions. This is absolutely crucial for maintaining a healthy democracy and, well, a trustworthy government. Wouldn't you agree? It's about how governments operate, making sure they're open, honest, and answerable to the people they serve. When there's a lack of transparency, trust just vanishes. And that can lead to corruption, abuse of power, and a feeling among citizens that their voices just don't matter. What are the real dangers when these principles are missing? Why are they so vital for public trust?
Well, when accountability and transparency are missing, you basically create fertile ground for unethical behavior because there are no clear consequences. Simple as that. It also makes it impossible for citizens to actually see and verify if their government is truly acting in their best interest. And this can quickly lead to widespread public cynicism, apathy, and maybe a decline in people wanting to participate in their civic duties. On the flip side, a strong emphasis on these principles builds trust, encourages thoughtful and responsible decision-making, and ensures that power is used for the common good, not for personal gain. It's truly fundamental to a government's legitimacy.
Absolutely. Our sources also touched on other important areas, though maybe with fewer questions, but it shows the breadth of ethical discussions. We saw ethics in international relations with 7 questions looking at morality on a global scale. Emotional intelligence had 6 questions, highlighting the role of emotions in ethical choices. Attitude had 5 questions, as did aptitude and foundational values for civil service, focusing on the core qualities needed for public roles. And finally, corporate governance with 3 questions, touching on ethical leadership in business. It's a truly comprehensive landscape of ethical inquiry. Now, our source gives us this brilliant, really straightforward framework for how to explain any ethical concept effectively. It boils it down to 2 main pillars: substance and style. Think of it like baking that delicious cake. You need excellent ingredients for the cake itself, that's the substance, and then a beautiful presentation, the frosting and sprinkles, that's the style. Both are essential for a truly great result.
Exactly. And they're not just separate elements, they're deeply interconnected. You could have the finest ingredients in the world, but if the cake is just, thrown on a plate messily, it's not as appealing, right? And similarly, a beautifully presented but ultimately empty cake won't satisfy anyone. This framework really emphasizes that both what you say and how you say it are equally important for making your ethical communication truly impactful.
Couldn't agree more. So let's dive into pillar one, substance. This is the absolute core of your message, the content itself. It includes your argument, which is the main point you're trying to make. How do you ensure your argument is logical and crystal clear, not just a jumble of thoughts?
Well, your argument needs to be like a clear road sign, easy to identify and follow.
Mm.
To make it logical, you need a clear line of reasoning. Imagine you're building a tower. Each block, each step in your thought must logically lead to the next. You need to avoid suddenly jumping to conclusions or making claims that aren't properly supported. A strong argument directly answers the question, what exactly are you trying to convince me of?
Right. And then we have substantiation. This is how you back up your argument. It includes facts, real world examples, logical reasoning, even quotes from those thinkers we just discussed. Why is providing clear proof so incredibly important in ethical discussions? Why can't we just state our opinion and expect it to be accepted?
Because ethical discussions aren't just about personal feelings, are they? They often involve competing values, very complex situations, and real-world consequences for people. Proof, whether it's a historical event, a logical step-by-step explanation, a legal precedent, or a philosophical principle, gives your argument real weight and credibility. Without proper backing, your argument is just an assertion, just a statement. Substantiation allows others to truly understand why you believe what you believe and to fairly evaluate your position.
Okay, that makes sense. And finally, for substance, there's language, the actual words you choose. Why is clear, precise language so crucial when talking about ethics? Why can't we just use maybe flowery or vague terms that might sound good but don't really say much?
Precise language is absolutely critical because ethical concepts can be incredibly nuanced and delicate. Ambiguous words can easily lead to misunderstandings, misinterpretations, and even unintended consequences. For instance, using justice versus fairness or equity versus equality, these terms have very distinct meanings in ethics. Using the right one shows you truly understand the concept and helps avoid confusion. It's about conveying your exact thought without leaving room for anyone to misread it.
Got it. So moving on to pillar two, style. This is all about how you present your ideas so they are easily understood and remembered. First, there's structure, how your information is organized. Why does a good, clear flow make such a huge difference in understanding, especially when you're dealing with really complex ethical problems?
A well-structured explanation is like a reliable map. It guides the listener or reader from point A to point B without them getting lost along the way. In ethical discussions, where ideas can be abstract and deeply interconnected, a good structure helps break down that complexity into smaller, more manageable parts. It creates a logical path, making it much easier to follow your train of thought and grasp the overall message. Imagine trying to understand a story told completely out of order. It's incredibly frustrating.
Absolutely. And then presentation for writers, this includes visual elements, but for us talking, it means clarity in our voice, the way we pace our words, how easy it is to listen to. How does the way something looks or sounds impact how well it's understood?
Presentation significantly affects how engaged someone is. If your ideas are presented clearly, even just through speech, with appropriate pauses, emphasis on key words, and a logical rhythm, it makes it much easier for the listener to take in and remember the information. Think of it like a messy room versus an organized one. You can find things so much more easily in an organized room. Good presentation reduces the mental effort for the audience, allowing them to focus entirely on the actual content itself.
Yeah, it really does. So whether you're explaining a complex problem at work or helping a friend understand a difficult decision, these two pillars, substance and style, are your guiding lights. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to truly grasp an idea when both the content and how it's presented are top-notch? It's truly a game changer.
Definitely. And moving beyond just substance and style, our source gives us an even more detailed breakdown. It looks at the specific qualities that make an explanation truly excellent, helping it stand out from just a good one.
Yes, this blueprint is so helpful because it gives us concrete things to aim for, whether we're talking or writing. Let's start with structure and presentation again, but get into the specifics. Our source talks about well-structured explanations, often following an introduction body conclusion format with clear sections or point posts. Why is this classic structure so universally effective for breaking down complex ideas? Whether you're writing a report or just preparing to explain something.
Well, the introduction body conclusion format provides a familiar mental roadmap, doesn't it? The introduction sets the stage, telling your audience what you're about to discuss. The body then develops your main points with examples and reasoning, and the conclusion brings it all together, summarizing and offering a final thought. Clear sections or signposts act like headings, guiding the listener through your points, making it easy to see the main ideas and how they connect. It prevents your insights from feeling like an overwhelming wall of information.
Right. And then there's the idea of highlighting keywords and phrases. Even in spoken form, we naturally emphasize certain words. Why does drawing attention to these key terms help your audience grasp the main points more quickly and effectively?
Highlighting keywords helps direct your audience's attention to the most important concepts. It's like signaling to them, pay extra attention to this term. It's central to my point.
Hmm.
For a listener, this might mean a slight pause or maybe a change in your voice when you say a crucial word. It acts as an anchor for understanding, helping them build a mental picture of your main ideas.
Okay. The source also emphasizes being concise with precise statements. This is about the power of getting straight to the point. Why is less is more often true in clear communication, especially when talking about sensitive subjects like ethics, where clarity is paramount?
Conciseness forces you to distill your thoughts down to their absolute essence. In ethics, where concepts can be abstract, using fewer, more precise words reduces any chance of misunderstanding. It also respects your audience's time and attention by cutting out unnecessary jargon or rambling. When you are concise, every single word carries weight, making your message more impactful and much more memorable.
And a quality that might seem simple but is incredibly important. Overall clarity, whether in written words or spoken delivery. How does the overall clarity of your presentation impact how well your message is received? Why does a muddled delivery or disorganized writing instantly undermine your message, no matter how good the content is?
Overall, clarity signals thoughtfulness and respect for your audience. In a written context, neatness and organization make it physically easier to read. In spoken form, a clear, confident, and well-paced delivery makes it easier to listen and absorb. When communication is messy or unclear, it creates a barrier, forcing the audience to work harder to understand, which can lead to disengagement or frustration. It actually takes away from the credibility of your message.
Yeah, it really does. Now, this next one is one of my favorites, effective use of illustrations like analogies and examples. I absolutely love a good analogy. How do vivid images or relatable stories help make abstract ethical concepts concrete and much easier to grasp?
Analogies and examples are powerful bridges between abstract ideas and concrete understanding. Ethical concepts can often feel distant or purely theoretical, right? But a relatable story or familiar comparison instantly brings them to life. They make the complex simple, the abstract tangible, and the important memorable. They help your audience connect new information to what they already know, making it much easier to understand and remember. They just click.
They really do. Okay, moving on to language. Beyond just being precise. The source mentions flawless and lucid use of language. This means more than just being grammatically correct, it's about being understood without effort. Why is this so crucial in ethical discussions?
Flawless and lucid language means your message flows effortlessly from speaker to listener. There are no grammatical errors, no awkward phrasing, nothing to trip up the audience. This allows the listener to focus entirely on the meaning of your ethical argument, rather than struggling to figure out your sentence structure or what a certain word means. It shows a deep mastery not just of the content, but of how to communicate that content effectively.
Right, and closely related to that is standard use of subject vocabulary. Why is using the right terms, the accepted language of the field, important for credibility and accuracy, rather than just using everyday words?
Using standard subject vocabulary shows that you are knowledgeable and well-versed in that specific field. It demonstrates that you understand the precise definitions and subtle differences of terms within ethics. For instance, correctly using deontology or consequentialism signals a deeper understanding than just vaguely talking about rules or outcomes. It adds accuracy and credibility, ensuring you're contributing to the established informed conversation.
Okay, makes sense. Now let's talk about your approach when discussing an ethical topic. The first point here is an objective and exact understanding of the demand. Why is it absolutely crucial to fully understand the question or problem before you even attempt to address it? We've all seen people answer a question that wasn't asked, right?
Oh, definitely. This is truly the starting point for effective critical thinking. If you don't grasp the exact demand of the question, you're essentially trying to solve the wrong problem. This often leads to arguments that aren't relevant, wasted effort, and ultimately a failure to communicate effectively. An objective understanding means setting aside your own assumptions and truly listening to what is being asked of you.
And related to that, being attentive to tail words like discuss, analyze, elaborate. How did these subtle cues, these little instruction words at the end of a question, guide the depth and direction of your thinking and how you should structure your response?
These tail words are basically your compass for navigation. Discusses means presenting multiple sides of an argument and weighing them. Analyze implies breaking down a concept into its parts and examining how they relate. Elaborate means providing more detail and explanation. Ignoring these words means you might give a quick summary when a deep analysis is needed, or vice versa. They guide the scope and depth of your argument, ensuring you truly meet the specific challenge of the question.
Okay, so pay attention to the instructions. Our source also highlights the need for an introduction that is specific to the question. We'll dive much deeper into different types of introductions soon, but why is it vital to hook the listener or reader right away and clearly set the context for this specific discussion?
A question-specific introduction immediately establishes relevance and frames the entire conversation. It tells your audience, okay, this is what we're going to talk about right now, and here's why it matters. It creates an immediate connection and draws them into your line of reasoning. A generic introduction, on the other hand, can feel detached and might leave the audience wondering if you truly grasp the specific issue at hand. First impressions count.
They really do. Another key approach is creating a balanced and coherent framework of arguments. This isn't just about listing points, it's about looking at multiple sides of an issue and ensuring all your points connect smoothly. Why is this so important for a strong and convincing ethical discussion?
A balanced framework shows a nuanced understanding. Ethical issues are rarely simple or black and white. They often involve trade-offs and conflicting values. Acknowledging different perspectives, even if you ultimately argue for one particular side, shows critical thinking and intellectual honesty. Coherence, meanwhile, ensures your arguments flow logically, building upon each other to form a complete and persuasive case, rather than just being a collection of separate points. It hangs together.
Right, it needs to flow. And finally, under approach, an insightful, conclusive statement. Why should an ending leave a lasting impression or offer a new perspective, rather than just simply repeating what you've already said?
A strong conclusion isn't just a summary, it's more like a synthesis. It ties everything together, perhaps offers a forward-looking thought, or reinforces the main takeaway in a new light. It should leave the audience with something to ponder, a final piece of wisdom, or maybe even a call to action. It's your last chance to make a powerful impact and ensure your main message truly sticks with them.
Nice. Okay, now let's look at the content itself. First, relevant content. The quality of your arguments, examples, and reasoning. This is the heart of any good discussion, isn't it? If your content isn't relevant or well supported, then nothing else truly matters.
Absolutely. Relevant content means directly addressing the question being asked. The quality of your arguments comes from their logic and the evidence you provide. The quality of your examples comes from how well they clearly illustrate your points. Without this strong foundation, even the best structure and language can't rescue a weak message. It's about substance in its purest, most essential form.
Then, adequate conceptual clarity. Are you truly understanding the core idea or just repeating terms you've heard elsewhere? How can you really tell if you genuinely grasp an ethical concept?
Conceptual clarity means you can explain an idea in your own words, connect it to other related concepts, and understand its real-world implications. It's not just memorizing a definition. If you can use an analogy or come up with an original example to explain a concept, that's a very strong sign of true understanding. It means you've moved beyond just surface-level knowledge and really made the concept your own.
Okay. And multifaceted arguments. Why is it truly beneficial to explore an issue from various angles, rather than just focusing on one perspective?
Multifaceted arguments provide a much richer, more complete understanding of a complex issue. Ethical problems often have economic, social, political, and cultural dimensions. Exploring these different angles allows you to present a more robust and convincing argument, anticipating potential counter-arguments and demonstrating a comprehensive grasp of the topic. It shows you've truly thought things through from many sides.
And another crucial point, effective choice of examples. How do specific stories, real-world events, or historical figures make your points more memorable and relatable for your audience?
Effective examples transform abstract ideas into concrete realities. They give your ethical arguments a human face, really. A well-chosen example can illustrate a principle far more powerfully than a theoretical explanation alone. It makes the information stick firmly in the listener's mind, creating a vivid image that reinforces your message and makes it harder to forget.
Yeah, examples are key. And finally, philosophical understanding and knowledge of personalities. Connecting back to our thinker's theme, how does knowing the roots of ethical ideas and the people who champion them enrich your understanding and strengthen your arguments?
This knowledge provides a historical and theoretical depth to your ethical reasoning. When you can refer to thinkers like Aristotle or Gandhi, you're not just offering your personal opinion, you're placing your argument within a long and respected tradition of intellectual inquiry. It adds weight, perspective, and a sense of continuity to your ethical discussion, showing you're building on established knowledge and wisdom.
You know, this whole blueprint, all these qualities we've discussed, it isn't just about passing an exam, is it? These are truly the hallmarks of being genuinely well-informed and able to clearly articulate your thoughts on any topic. Have you ever tried to explain something to someone and it just didn't quite land? These qualities are probably the secret missing ingredient.
Exactly. And mastering these qualities isn't just about delivering information, it's about developing a structured, critical way of thinking itself. It actively encourages you to ask, am I truly being clear? Am I providing enough solid evidence? Am I considering all the different angles? It sharpens your mind as much as it polishes your message.
All right, let's talk about first impressions then, introductions. Our sources really emphasize that an introduction should be tailored to the specific demand of the question, and that a dynamic introduction sets a strong foundation for the entire explanation. Think about it. How often does a great opening instantly grab your attention and make you want to hear more? Oh, constantly. An introduction is so critical because it's your first chance to frame the entire conversation and signal the depth of your understanding right from the very beginning. It's not just about defining a term, it's about showing you grasp the core of the issue and inviting your audience into a meaningful discussion.
Right. And one powerful way to kick things off is with a relevant quote or a thinker's idea. Let's look at an example. The question asked was, if one takes care of the means, the end will take care of itself. Discuss. The example introduction given was, Gandhiji said that the means justify the end. Both have been part of an ethical debate where one school thinks that the end can be justified only if the means are good. What do you think about starting a discussion with a powerful quote like this? Especially from someone like Mahatma Gandhi, a global figure known for his ethical stance. How does it immediately set the tone in context? Well, this approach immediately frames the entire discussion within a classic ethical debate. By citing Mahatma Gandhi, the introduction shows an awareness of significant historical thought on the subject. It's not just stating an opinion, it's positioning the discussion within a well-established intellectual tradition, instantly inviting a deeper dive into that timeless means versus ends argument.
Yeah, it really anchors it. Let's take another example. The question was, discuss the ethical implications of withholding information in public administration. And the example introduction, citing Thomas Jefferson. Information is the currency of democracy. The withholding of information from the public marks the violation of democratic principles.
See, a single quote from a historical figure like Thomas Jefferson can instantly connect the abstract idea with holding information
Marks the violation of democratic principles.
See, a single quote from a historical figure like Thomas Jefferson can instantly connect the abstract idea with holding information to the fundamental values of a democratic society. It immediately establishes a significant ethical implication by grounding it in a foundational principle of governance. It makes it clear this isn't just some minor issue, but something that strikes at the very heart of how a democracy functions.
Very powerful. Okay, here's one more. The question was, corruption exists and thrives in Indian society because it is socially accepted and even seen as aspirational. Do you agree?
Hmm.
And the introduction, citing Kaushik Basu, Dr. Kaushik Basu has argued that in India there has been a Sanskritization of corruption, leading to its acceptance at a social level. Okay, let's unpack the Sanskritization idea a bit. Dr. Kaushik Basu, who's a noted Indian economist, used this term to suggest that corruption, while traditionally seen as negative, has become deeply integrated and even normalized within social structures over time, almost gaining a form of cultural acceptance. How does introducing such a specific socioeconomic theory immediately add depth to the discussion on corruption? It makes it sound more scholarly, right? Less just anecdotal.
Exactly. This specific introduction is powerful because it introduces a specialized term, Sanskritization of corruption, from an expert. This shows a sophisticated understanding of the social and cultural aspects of corruption, moving beyond just a simple moral condemnation. It immediately frames the discussion as one that understands the complex societal roots of the problem, inviting a more nuanced analysis rather than just a superficial one. It signals depth.
Definitely. Okay, another way to make your introduction compelling is by linking it to a current event, a recent report, or a powerful statistic. This makes the topic feel immediate, urgent, relevant to today. For example, the question asked, what are the problems arising out of declining ethical standards among public servants? And the introduction from Vishaka Yadav. A recent Lockneedy study highlighted the increasing instances of corruption, elitism, and irresponsible behavior in public servants. The declining ethical standards thus need to be arrested as soon as possible.
Starting with a current study, like the one from Lockneedy, which is an Indian research institution, really grounds the ethical discussion in real-world problems. It immediately tells the listener, look, this isn't just theory, it's happening right now. This approach makes the problem feel urgent and tangible, showing that the issue isn't abstract but has immediate practical consequences being observed today.
Yeah, it makes it real. Here's another example. The question was, do you think that public service delivery is efficient and sufficient enough to improve the lives of vulnerable groups in India? And the introduction from Ashi Sharma. India ranks 132-190 in the Human Development Index, highlighting a dire need for quality public services, especially for vulnerable section groups. Using a clear, stark statistic like the Human Development Index ranking, which measures things like health, education, living standards, immediately establishes the urgency and scale of the problem. It brings the why right to the forefront, doesn't it?
It does. A single, powerful number can effectively convey the gravity of a situation. It shifts the conversation from a general philosophical debate to a discussion rooted in measurable human welfare. It tells the listener that the stakes are high and the ethical implications are directly tied to tangible human suffering and gaps in human development.
Right. Okay, sometimes the most straightforward approach is the best, simply defining the key term. But even a definition can be dynamic, thought-provoking. Let's look at this question. Though it may seem that accountability and efficiency are antithetical, accountability is a sine qua non for good governance. Discuss. And sine qua non just means an essential condition or requirement. And the example introduction from Divya Mishra. Accountability is a combination of answerability and enforceability. Since it involves procedural correctness, it may lead to multiple checks, which causes delay and inefficiency.
See, here, the definition isn't just a dry statement. It immediately introduces the tension inherent in the question. That apparent conflict between accountability, which involves answerability, and enforceability through proper procedures and efficiency, which often means moving quickly. By framing accountability in a way that acknowledges its potential downsides for speed, it shows a sophisticated understanding of the complexities of governance right away. It anticipates the core of the discussion.
That's clever. Let's consider another example. The question was, while emotional intelligence is an essential tool for a public servant, it can also be misused. Discuss with examples. And the introduction from Shah-Marki Shirag. Emotional intelligence is the ability to monitor one's emotions, to discriminate between different emotions, and to use it to guide thinking and behavior. Salovey and Mayer.
Yeah.
Using a direct quote definition from experts like Salovey and Mayer, who are pioneers in emotional intelligence research, instantly adds authority. It tells you, okay, we're building on established research knowledge here. How does that impact your trust in the discussion that follows?
It immediately establishes credibility. By citing respected experts like Salovey and Mayer, the introduction signals that the discussion will be grounded in academic rigor and established psychological understanding, rather than just, anecdotal observations. It gives the listener confidence that the subsequent points will be well-informed and authoritative.
Good point. Finally, an introduction can involve explaining your understanding of the question's core premise. This shows you've really thought deeply about the underlying issue. The question was, what do you understand by ethical dilemma? Explain how it can lead to a crisis of conscience. And the introduction from Kamal Punyar, an ethical dilemma is a position in which a person is forced to make choices between opposing ethical situations, where the selection of one would lead to the loss of the other moral ethical principle.
This introduction immediately clarifies the core tension of an ethical dilemma, that unavoidable loss of some moral principle, no matter which decision is made. It perfectly sets up the idea of a crisis of conscience by explaining this inherent conflict. Have you ever faced a situation like this, where there was no single good choice, only a less bad one, and how difficult that felt? It really resonates.
It does. Okay, here's a really clever one. The question was, compassion should never be considered a weakness, but rather an essential element for a congenial administrative working environment. Discuss. And the introduction from Vishaka Yadav. The above statement can be aptly understood in the framework of the situation of impartiality versus neutrality and bureaucratic rigidity versus democratic ethoses. Now, this introduction doesn't define anything directly, but it immediately provides a lens, a framework of bigger concepts through which to view the question. It makes you think about broader tensions within public administration, like balancing impartiality and neutrality, or strict rules versus humane ideals. What a clever way to begin. It shows an immediate grasp of the complex layers involved.
Yes, this demonstrates a very high level of conceptual understanding and synthesis. Instead of simply agreeing or disagreeing, it immediately frames the question within a set of known tensions and debates within public administration. It signals to the listener, okay, I understand the deeper currents at play here, and sets the stage for a sophisticated discussion of how compassion navigates these often conflicting values. Really smart.
It is. Okay, let's move from crafting powerful introductions to diving into some specific ethical concepts themselves. Our first example comes from a top performer script and tackles prejudice, a topic that unfortunately affects us all. So, the question asked was, according to you, what are the main reasons behind prejudice against certain sections of a society? Discuss with examples.
Right. And prejudice is defined here as an attitude of intense stereotyping, hate, and discrimination against certain sections of society. It's important to understand this strong foundation before we explore its causes. It's not just disliking, it's an active, intense form of negative judgment. What does that definition immediately make you think of? Maybe in terms of your own experiences or observations.
Yeah, that definition really emphasizes the severity of it. It's not casual dislike. Now let's look at a few of the main reasons for prejudice, which our sources illuminate with great examples. First, there's lack of education or information about a particular group. The example given is, many people think all Northeasterners in India eat dogs. How does simple ignorance or a lack of accurate knowledge fuel negative beliefs and stereotypes? It seems so basic, yet it's incredibly powerful in shaping attitudes.
Well, ignorance truly creates a vacuum that stereotypes are quick to fill. When you don't have accurate information, your mind often defaults to simplistic, often negative generalizations that might come from rumors, media, or even childhood biases. It's a mental shortcut, really, that prevents us from seeing individuals for who they truly are and instead applies a broad, often derogatory brushstroke to an entire group.
A mental shortcut, yeah. Another powerful factor is lack of intergroup contact, leading to social separation or ghettoization. The example here is, many people do not know how to greet people of other religions. What happens when different groups simply don't interact or understand each other's customs? How does that physical and social distance breed suspicion and misunderstanding?
When groups don't interact, they remain others in our minds. Social separation prevents the personal connections that are essential for breaking down stereotypes. Without direct experience, individuals rely on secondhand information, which can easily be prejudiced. Simple things like understanding greetings or cultural norms, which naturally come from contact, are crucial for building bridges and seeing our shared humanity. Without it, fear and mistrust can just fester, making it much easier to hold negative attitudes.
Right, distance breeds mistrust. A truly dangerous reason is fake news and misinformation. The example shared is devastating. Lynchings due to the belief of child kidnapping. How can false information, especially when it spreads so quickly online these days, have such devastating real-world consequences, turning existing prejudice into violent, irreversible acts?
Unchecked misinformation actively exploits existing biases and can dramatically accelerate the path to violence. Fake news often thrives on emotional appeal, cleverly bypassing critical thinking. When people are already prone to prejudice, misinformation acts like fuel to a fire, providing a false justification for hate and inciting extreme actions, often with tragic, irreversible consequences. It weaponizes ignorance, turning it into a tool of harm. It's terrifying.
It really is. The section on prejudice concludes with a powerful quote from Voltaire, the famous French philosopher. Prejudice is what fools have for reason. What a powerful, direct statement. What does it tell us about the logical basis, or rather, the complete lack thereof for prejudice?
Voltaire's quote directly attacks the irrationality of prejudice. It implies that prejudice isn't based on thoughtful consideration, evidence, or sound reasoning, but rather on ignorance, fear, or inherited biases. It suggests that prejudice is a substitute for actual logical thought, a lazy way of forming judgments without truly engaging with facts or empathy. It highlights the intellectual laziness at its very core.
Yeah, what fools have for reason. When you look at these reasons for prejudice, ignorance, lack of contact, misinformation, which ones do you think are most prevalent in society today and why? It feels like fake news and a general lack of genuine intergroup contact are enormous factors in our modern world.
I think you're right. The digital age has amplified misinformation, and while we're more connected globally, we can also become more siloed in our own echo chambers, reducing meaningful intergroup contact. It's a paradox.
It really is. Okay, our next concept is absolutely crucial for anyone interested in public service: political neutrality. The question was, explaining the concept of political neutrality, discuss its significance in administration. Also, highlight how the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules seek to ensure political neutrality in the civil services.
Right. So political neutrality refers to the idea of remaining unbiased and unaffected by the political party currently in power. It means offering objective, fact-based advice to political leaders with the sole goal of promoting citizen welfare. What immediately strikes you about this definition? It means a civil servant's loyalty is to the Constitution and the public, not to a specific political agenda, no matter who is in charge.
That distinction is truly key. Their job isn't to push one party's agenda, but to serve all citizens fairly. Now let's look at its significance in administration. First, for politicians and the government. It means they can trust the administration, which leads to better implementation of schemes and encourages new ideas. Why is this trust between political leaders and civil servants so vital for effective governance?
Well, trust is the very foundation of good governance. If politicians don't trust the advice or the implementation efforts of civil servants because they suspect political bias, decisions can become inefficient, overly political, or even completely stalled. Political neutrality ensures that advice is given based on expertise and facts, not political convenience, leading to more robust policies and effective implementation, regardless of which political party is currently in power. It provides stability.
Right. And then for bureaucrats themselves, the civil servants, it allows them to focus on their work without constant fear of being transferred or punished, and it fosters better teamwork. How does political neutrality create a more stable and effective work environment for them, freeing them from political pressures?
Political neutrality truly protects the professional integrity of the civil service. When bureaucrats are seen as neutral, they are much less likely to be unfairly targeted for punitive transfers by incoming governments or to feel pressured to make politically motivated decisions themselves. This stability allows them to develop expertise, build long-term relationships, and foster a culture of professional collaboration and efficiency, rather than being constantly worried about political shifts. They can just do their jobs.
And ultimately, this also significantly benefits the citizens. It leads to better results, better services, timely handling of complaints, and strengthens overall trust in the government. How does neutrality directly benefit you as a citizen, ensuring you get fair and equal treatment from public services?
Political neutrality is essentially the citizen's guarantee that public services are delivered fairly and equally to everyone, regardless of their political affiliation or which party happens to be in power. It ensures that decisions are made based on established rules and the welfare of the public, not on favoritism or political score settling. This builds essential public trust, knowing that the government machinery is working for everyone.
Okay. Now let's look at how the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules actively work to enforce this political neutrality. These rules, which govern Indian civil servants' behavior, state that it does not allow civil servants to publicly support or defend the views of any political party other than the government's official position. Why is this rule in place? It seems quite strict, but for a very good reason, I imagine.
It's fundamental to maintaining both the perception and the reality of neutrality. If civil servants are seen publicly endorsing or campaigning for political parties, it seriously undermines their impartiality and creates a strong perception of bias. It blurs the lines between carrying out policies and acting as a political advocate, which can severely damage public trust and compromise their ability to serve all citizens fairly. The line needs to be clear.
Absolutely. And crucially, these rules mandate the implementation of any government scheme with utmost honesty and as a responsibility without being affected by political bias. How does this rule protect the integrity of public service, ensuring programs are carried out as intended, no matter which political party proposed them?
This rule is about ensuring that the machinery of the state functions consistently and without interruption, regardless of political changes. Civil servants are the permanent executive. They provide continuity to governance. By mandating unbiased implementation, it ensures that welfare programs and public services continue to reach their intended beneficiaries without being sabotaged or selectively applied due to a civil servant's personal political disagreements with the ruling party's agenda.
So, what does this all mean? Our source concludes that bureaucracy and government are two important pillars of ethical and responsible governance and should work in sync and harmony to ensure citizen welfare. What an ideal goal, right? But how challenging do you think it is to truly maintain this neutrality in practice, especially with all the political pressures involved?
Oh, incredibly challenging. In a highly politicized environment, maintaining genuine political neutrality demands immense personal integrity and courage. It requires civil servants to resist pressures, uphold their professional ethics, and constantly prioritize the public good over any political allegiances. It's a continuous challenge, but it is absolutely vital for the health and fairness of any democracy.
Yeah, courage is definitely needed there. Okay, now for a truly profound ethical concept, conscience. The question was, never do anything against the conscience, even if the state demands it. In this context, discuss the role of conscience in taking ethical decisions in administration.
Conscience refers to the voice of reason from within that guides us on what is right and wrong. The example given is, if a child is cheating in an exam, his conscience will prick him. What does this inner voice mean to you? Have you ever felt that prick of conscience, that gut feeling that something isn't quite right, even if no one else is watching?
Absolutely, it's that powerful inner alarm bell. It's so strong because it's deeply personal. Now let's explore how conscience helps in ethical decisions within administration with some incredible examples. First, it ensures accountability and objectivity. The example cited is Prahat Kumar, an IPS officer, Indian Police Service, arrested his own son for involvement in liquor smuggling. How incredibly difficult must that have been? What does it tell us about unwavering adherence to one's conscience and public duty, even when it involves immense personal cost?
Wow. This example powerfully showcases how conscience can override personal ties and deep emotional attachment in the face of duty. It demonstrates that the voice of reason can demand a level of impartiality that goes against natural human instincts, ensuring that rules and justice are applied objectively regardless of who is involved. That truly is the ultimate test of accountability.
It really is. Conscience also ensures impartial and nonpartisan behavior. For example, IAS officers, Indian Administrative Service, distributed vaccines equally among villagers, irrespective of caste, religion, etc. Why is impartiality so critical in public service, especially when it comes to sensitive services like healthcare, where biases can literally mean life or death for people?
This example highlights conscience as a vital defense against discrimination. In public service, where resources are often limited and demand is high, the temptation to favor certain groups can be strong. Conscience, in this case, guides officials to treat every citizen as equal, ensuring that fundamental rights and services are distributed based on actual need, not identity. This is absolutely crucial for social justice and for maintaining public trust.
Right. And here's a really challenging one. Conscience allows denial of pressures, even from the state. The example given is IAS Ashok Khemka is frequently transferred as he denies the state's demands of corruption. This is a powerful example of someone standing firm. What does it take to defy powerful external pressures, even from your employer, based purely on your inner moral compass?
Think about the immense moral courage required to consistently prioritize your conscience over your own career stability. It demands an incredibly strong sense of self and an unwavering commitment to ethical principles. It means accepting significant personal costs for upholding what is right, even when the system tries to push you otherwise. It's about being an ethical insurgent within the system, in a way.
An ethical insurgent, I like that. Our source also brilliantly includes a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him it is right. What does this quote truly reveal about the nature of courage and ethical leadership, especially when conscience is your only guide?
King's quote powerfully connects conscience to moral leadership. It's about that deep conviction to act on deeply held ethical beliefs, even when it means sacrificing personal comfort, political gain, or popular approval. It highlights that true ethical leadership often demands standing alone, guided by an internal moral compass that transcends external pressures and fleeting popular opinion. It's the ultimate test of integrity.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift gears a bit to something that shakes our entire outlook: attitude. The question asked was, what factors lead to a positive attitude in a person? How does a positive attitude enhance the effectiveness of civil servants in performing their duties?
Right. And positive attitudes are defined here as a set of value and belief systems aimed at the individual or collective good of society, such as religious tolerance, brotherhood, respect, and empathy.
Hmm.
What's your immediate reaction to this definition? It's not just about being cheerful, it's about holding values that genuinely uplift society.
That's a great distinction. It's not just personal happiness, but a broader ethical stance that benefits everyone. Now, let's delve into the factors leading to a positive attitude. First, the surrounding environment. This includes the values taught by family, schools, and teachers. How do the people and places around us, especially in our formative years, deeply shape our perspective and predisposition towards a positive outlook?
Well, our early environment is like fertile ground for our attitudes. The values we absorb from our family, the lessons we learn in school, the examples set by our teachers, they profoundly influence our worldview. A nurturing environment that emphasizes kindness, respect, and resilience can instill a naturally positive inclination, while a negative one can easily foster cynicism. It's truly foundational to who we become.
Definitely. Then the role of religion. Concepts like Sarva Dharma Sambhava, which is an Indian concept meaning equal respect for all religions, and Nishkam Karma, meaning selfless action without expecting rewards. How can spiritual or philosophical beliefs foster positivity by providing a deep framework for meaning in moral action?
Many religious and spiritual traditions offer ethical frameworks that naturally promote positive attitudes. Sarva Dharma Sambhava, for example, directly encourages tolerance and respect for diversity, which is a cornerstone of positive social interaction. Nishkam Karma encourages selfless action, which shifts focus from personal gain to collective well-being, fostering a sense of purpose and contribution that is inherently positive. These beliefs provide a moral compass that points towards altruism and harmony.
Okay. We also have inspiration and learned experiences, the lives of great leaders like Bose and Gandhi. How do powerful role models and the lessons we learn from our own life experiences contribute to building and sustaining a positive attitude, even when faced with incredibly difficult times?
Role models provide tangible living examples of positive attitudes in action. When we see leaders like Subhas Chandra Bose and Mahatma Gandhi exhibiting resilience, courage, and an unwavering commitment to their ideals despite immense challenges, it deeply inspires us. Similarly, our own learned experiences, especially overcoming adversity, can teach us the power of perseverance and lead to a more hopeful and resilient outlook. They demonstrate that positive action truly can lead to change.
That's true. Now let's look at how a positive attitude enhances the effectiveness of civil servants with some wonderful examples. First, empathy and compassion. The example given is Jitendra Soni, an IAS officer, initiating the Charan Paduka Abhiyan, where he distributed slippers to all school children in need. How does this simple yet incredibly thoughtful act demonstrate the power of empathy and compassion in action within public service?
This example beautifully illustrates how a positive attitude, fueled by genuine empathy, directly translates into concrete citizen-centric actions. It's not just about following rules, it's about truly seeing and addressing the real needs of people. Distributing slippers isn't some complex grand policy, but it shows a deep understanding of a child's plight and a compassionate response, building trust and delivering welfare in a very direct, humane way.
It really does. Next, citizen-centric governance. The examples given are the success of RTI, Right to Information, and the Citizens Charter. How does a positive attitude on the part of civil servants translate into creating systems and initiatives that truly serve the public and empower them?
A positive attitude among civil servants is crucial for citizen-centric governance because it fosters a service-oriented mindset. It means viewing citizens not just as beneficiaries, but as active stakeholders whose rights and needs are paramount. The success of initiatives like the Right to Information Act and Citizens Charters depends heavily on officials who genuinely believe in transparency and accountability and who actively work to facilitate citizen engagement rather than obstruct it. Attitude matters there.
It does. Then, gender sensitization and tolerance. The example is Project Sweetrudy, an initiative that involved employing transgender persons in government offices. What impact does an inclusive and tolerant attitude have on marginalized groups and society as a whole? Moving beyond mere acceptance to active integration and empowerment.
Proactive inclusion, driven by a positive attitude, directly addresses historical injustices and promotes equality. Project Sweetrudy is a powerful example of an attitude that recognizes the dignity and potential of all individuals. By intentionally creating opportunities for marginalized groups like transgender persons, it not only provides them with livelihoods, but also actively challenges societal prejudices and fosters a more inclusive, equitable administrative environment for everyone.
That's fantastic. And finally, upholds probity and integrity. The example is Ashokemka and his unwavering service in spite of frequent transfers. Connecting back to our discussion on conscience, how does a positive attitude sustain integrity even in the face of adversity and systemic pressure, keeping that moral character unwavering?
A positive attitude, when combined with strong ethical values, truly becomes a source of incredible resilience. For someone like Ashokemka, a positive attitude isn't about being naive or overly optimistic. It's about having the deep conviction that acting with probity and integrity, even when it's incredibly difficult and unpopular, is fundamentally right and ultimately beneficial. It's that internal strength and belief in the good that allows them to persist despite significant external challenges.
Yeah, that inner belief. The answer concludes with Winston Churchill's famous line, "Attitude is a small thing that makes a big difference." So what does this all mean for you, listening? How profound is it that something seemingly small, like an attitude, can have such a monumental impact on ethical governance and even our daily lives?
Absolutely. Promoting a positive attitude, as the source suggests, isn't just about feeling good. It's a foundational element for ethical governance and effective interaction in any sphere. Think about this. What can you do to consciously cultivate and maintain a positive attitude in challenging situations, recognizing its profound impact on your own actions and the environment around you? It's worth reflecting on.
Definitely. Okay, before we move to advanced strategies, let's briefly touch upon a fundamental relationship, ethics and law. Our source succinctly states, while ethics provides an internal moral compass, law provides an external, enforceable standard of behavior. What's the key difference you hear there? One is about what we feel is right inside, the other is about rules enforced by society with consequences.
Right. And they often overlap, but crucially not always. The law sets a baseline for acceptable behavior, kind of a minimum standard. Ethics, however, often asks us to aim higher, guided by our internal values and sense of right and wrong. This leads to a critical question. Can something be perfectly legal but still deeply unethical? Or even ethical but technically illegal? Let's explore that breakdown.
Yeah, let's walk through the breakdown of actions based on their ethical and legal standing with examples. First, the ideal scenario, ethical and legal. The examples given are right to education, prohibition of child labor. These are things we widely agree are both morally good and legally enforced by society. Why are these the sweet spot we aim for in a just society?
Well, these actions truly represent a societal consensus on fundamental values that are deemed so important they've been written into law. They are the ideal because they align both our internal moral compass and external societal rules, leading to outcomes that benefit everyone and are protected by the full force of the state. They reflect a mature ethical and legal system working in harmony.
Okay, now for the tricky one, unethical and legal. Examples here are breaking a promise, adultery, not helping an accident victim in places where there's no legal duty to rescue law. Why are these considered legal, meaning you won't be arrested, but clearly unethical, causing moral harm or violating trust? This really highlights where the law doesn't reach, but ethics still absolutely applies.
This category truly reveals the limitations of law. Laws generally deal with actions that cause direct, demonstrable harm to society or individuals, which can be formally proven and punished. Breaking a promise or committing adultery, while morally wrong and damaging to relationships, typically don't fall under criminal law because they are considered personal moral failings or private matters unless other laws are broken. Not helping an accident victim, while ethically reprehensible, isn't always legally mandated everywhere unless there's a specific duty to act, demonstrating that gap between moral obligation and legal enforcement. Law can't cover everything.
Right. Then we have ethical and illegal. This is a classic dilemma. The example is a hungry child stealing a loaf of bread. Why might an action be morally justifiable in the eyes of many, driven by desperate need, but still legally punishable under the letter of the law? This really makes you think about the purpose of law, doesn't it?
Exactly. What happens when the strict application of law conflicts with a higher moral imperative, such as survival? While stealing is illegal to protect property rights, the ethical context of a hungry child can evoke deep compassion and a sense that the law, in this specific instance, might be unjust or too rigid. It highlights the tension between universal legal principles and individual desperate circumstances, often pushing us to question the spirit versus the strict letter of the law.
Yeah, Spear's letter. And finally, unethical and illegal. These are the universally condemned actions. Examples: untouchability, bonded labor. Why are these both morally repugnant and legally forbidden, reflecting a strong societal and legal rejection?
These actions are considered egregious violations of fundamental human dignity and rights. They cause severe and systemic harm, and society has reached a strong consensus that they are not only morally wrong, but also must be actively suppressed and punished by law. They represent the most severe breaches of both ethical and legal standards, where the internal moral compass and external rules are in complete alignment in their condemnation.
This framework, this breakdown, really helps us understand the nuances of right and wrong and where the boundaries of rules exist. It encourages us to ask, is adhering strictly to the law always the most ethical path? And vice versa. It pushes us beyond simple rule following to consider the deeper moral implications of actions and the inherent complexities of societal norms versus legal codes.
It's a critical thinking tool, really.
Yeah, it is. Okay, let's move into some advanced strategies now for making your ethical explanations truly shine. The first strategy is about using illustrations, diagrams, and logically structured arguments to add depth and clarity. We see this strategy in an answer about probity. The question was, what is the significance of probity in governance? How important is the role of leadership in fostering probity and ethical governance in public service?
Right. And probity is defined as the uncompromising adherence to principles of honesty and integrity. What does uncompromising truly mean in this context? How does it differ from just being honest? It means there's no wiggle room, no bending of the rules, even when it's inconvenient or incredibly difficult. It's absolute.
That's a powerful word, uncompromising. Now, let's look at its significance in governance with strong examples. First, it checks corruption. It provides courage to expose wrongdoing. The example here is Vinod Rai, a former top auditor in India, played a key role in exposing the 2G scam, a major corruption scandal. How does a culture of probity empower individuals to act against corruption, even when facing powerful forces?
Well, probity creates an internal fortitude within individuals. When people are uncompromisingly committed to honesty, they gain the moral courage to challenge unethical practices, even at great personal risk. Vinod Rai's example illustrates how a strong sense of probity can enable an individual to shine a light on massive corruption, demonstrating that unwavering ethical standards can serve as a potent weapon against wrongdoing.
It really can. Probity also ensures public welfare. Strict adherence to morality is beneficial for public welfare. The example here is incredible. Shrujana Gamala, an IAS officer, worked with her 22-day-old child during the COVID-19 pandemic, stating, "Duty comes first."
What an incredible example.
Yeah.
How does this show probity in action, even beyond just financial honesty, extending to deep dedication and commitment to public service? This truly shows how probity extends beyond mere financial integrity to encompass a deep sense of duty and even personal sacrifice for the public good. Sujana Gamala's actions embody probity as an unwavering commitment to one's responsibilities, even under extraordinary personal circumstances. It demonstrates that true integrity involves prioritizing service and welfare above personal convenience, setting a powerful example for ethical leadership.
Amazing dedication. Now let's look at the role of leadership in fostering probity. First, leaders must lead by example. Lal Bahadur Shastri, a former Prime Minister of India, removed his surname to stand against caste discrimination. How does a leader's personal actions, even symbolic ones, set the ethical standard for an entire organization or nation, inspiring others to follow suit?
A leader's personal conduct can be a remarkably powerful ethical statement. Lal Bahadur Shastri removing his surname wasn't just a political act, it was a profound demonstration of his personal commitment to equality and social justice. This kind of ethical leadership creates a ripple effect, inspiring others to internalize and live by those same principles, establishing a clear moral tone for the entire system. Actions, indeed, speak much louder than words.
They really do. And leaders must provide a vision of good governance. Gandhi's concept of Sarvodaya through Antyodaya, welfare of all through welfare of the last person. How does a clear, inspiring ethical vision help guide ethical behavior throughout an administration, providing a compass for decision making?
A clear vision like Mahatma Gandhi's Sarvodaya, through Antyodaya, meaning the upliftment of all, especially through the upliftment of the most vulnerable, provides a profound moral framework that informs every decision and action within an administration. It sets the overarching ethical goal, the welfare of everyone, particularly those most in need. This vision acts as a constant reminder, guiding policies and individual behaviors towards a collective ethical purpose, ensuring that all efforts are aligned with the highest standards of public service and justice.
So what does this all mean? The idea is that persons with probity and leadership skills will establish ethical governance in its true spirit. What a powerful combination. What leaders, past or present, come to mind when you think of someone who truly embodied this kind of uncompromising honesty and inspiring leadership?
It's a great question. The combination of probity and leadership is truly transformative. It's not enough for a leader to be personally honest. They must also inspire and institutionalize those values throughout an organization. This makes us think, how can we, in our own spheres of influence, cultivate both personal integrity and the ability to inspire others towards ethical action? Good point. Okay, our next strategy focuses on applied and mixed type questions, where you combine conceptual clarity with practical examples. This is beautifully illustrated through a question about the teachings of Swami Dayananda Saraswati. The question was, What are the points of Dayanand Saraswati's teachings that hold contemporary relevance? Right. Swami Dayanand Saraswati was a great social reformer and spiritual leader from 19th century India whose legacy continues even today. It's truly fascinating to see how wisdom from the past can still guide us in modern times. It reminds us that fundamental ethical principles often transcend time and culture.
Definitely. Let's break down his teachings and their contemporary relevance with examples. First, his emphasis on education. He strongly championed value education. This is relevant today as moral values sometimes seem to be declining, necessitating education to build a better society. Why is value education still so vital today, beyond just teaching facts and figures?
The need for value education is incredibly timeless. In an era of rapid change and constant information, simply knowing facts isn't enough. Value education instills critical thinking, empathy, ethical reasoning, all crucial for navigating complex moral dilemmas and building a society where individuals act responsibly and with integrity. It's truly about shaping character, not just intellect.
Shaping character, yeah. Second, respect for women. He advocated strongly for girls' education at a time when half the population was often denied it. This is relevant today in the context of ensuring dignity for all, including transgender individuals. How does historical advocacy for one marginalized group, like women, pave the way for dignity and equality for all marginalized groups today, showing that continuous thread of social justice?
Think about how movements for one group's rights expand our understanding of universal human dignity. Dayanand Saraswati's advocacy for women's education was revolutionary for his time, challenging established norms. Today, that very principle of equal dignity naturally extends to all marginalized groups like transgender persons, reminding us that the fight for equality is an ongoing process that continuously builds on past achievements. It expands the circle.
It does. Third, compassion for the poor. He held a benevolent, kind attitude toward the poor and downtrodden. This is necessary today, given rising intolerance, and to have empathy towards migrants. How can historical figures inspire us to address current social issues like intolerance towards migrants, showing that empathy is a universal and timeless virtue?
The principle of compassion directly confronts contemporary challenges like intolerance. Dayanand Saraswati's benevolent attitude towards the poor serves as a powerful reminder that our ethical obligations extend to the most vulnerable, including migrants who often face immense hardship and prejudice. It calls us to actively cultivate empathy and reject the dehumanization that often accompanies social strife. His example still speaks.
It really does. This truly shows how ethical ideas from the past are not just history lessons, but living principles that can help us navigate today's complex world. What teaching of his resonates most with you, and why?
For me, it might be the emphasis on education, because it feels so foundational to addressing almost all other social and ethical issues, but they're all powerful. The contemporary relevance of these teachings highlights the enduring nature of fundamental human values. It encourages us to see history not as something separate and distant, but as a living dialogue that can continuously inform and guide us through our present ethical challenges.
A living dialogue. Well put. Okay, finally, let's tackle a specific strategy for quote-based questions, which often challenge us to interpret deep philosophical ideas. The suggested structure for answering these is interpretation, explanation, exemplification, and prescription. Let's apply this to a powerful quote from Aristotle, the ancient Greek philosopher. The question was, all persons ought to endeavor to follow what is right and not what is established. Aristotle. What does this quotation mean to you?
Okay, so starting with interpretation. This quote connects beautifully to Mahatma Gandhi's view. Truth is truth even if no one follows it. A lie is a lie even if everyone follows it. When Aristotle talks about what is established, he means existing norms, traditions, or laws, the status quo basically. What is right points to a higher universal moral truth. It's about not just going with the flow or what's popular or easy.
Right, that distinction is crucial. It's about not just conforming. Now, for the explanation section, elaborating on the quote's meaning and contemporary relevance. Our source says, in many periods of history, blindly following what was established by rulers led to negative consequences. For instance, Germans who followed Hitler accepted Nazism and murder as the established truth. How does this historical example powerfully illustrate the dangers of blindly following established norms, even if they're legally sanctioned at the time? It's chilling.
It really is. This example forces us to confront the ethical responsibility of individual conscience, even in the face of overwhelming state power and the catastrophic outcomes when that responsibility is ignored. It highlights the profound consequences when a society prioritizes blind obedience to established authority over a fundamental sense of right and wrong. The Nazi regime is a stark reminder that established can be profoundly immoral.
Definitely. Next, for exemplification, providing relevant examples of those who followed right over established. The script points out, on the other hand, great change has been brought by those who followed what was right instead of what was established. Ambedkar followed the truth of equality, not the established caste-based inequality. How did Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a monumental figure in India's fight for social justice, courageously challenge deeply entrenched societal norms, the very fabric of an established system?
Ambedkar's life truly embodies this Aristotelian principle. He didn't just critique the established caste system in India, he actively fought against it, advocating for the fundamental truth of human equality. His actions were a direct challenge to centuries of deeply ingrained social hierarchy, proving that individual moral conviction can move mountains and fundamentally alter what is established.
Truly remarkable. Another monumental example. Gandhiji followed his truth against established British rule, which led to India's independence. This is a classic case of upholding right over established power, isn't it? How did his unwavering commitment ultimately overturn a powerful empire?
Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolent resistance against British rule is a profound demonstration of the power of moral truth over established power. He appealed to a higher ethical standard of justice and human rights, galvanizing millions to challenge an oppressive, established system. His example shows that moral conviction, even without military might, can be an unstoppable force for change, proving that the right can ultimately triumph over the established.
And this principle is vital in the civil services too. For example, to provide aid on compassionate grounds, not just based on established rules, for example, to prevent starvation deaths. This highlights a moral imperative beyond bureaucratic rules, doesn't it? When do ethical demands sometimes outweigh strict adherence to procedure?
This raises an important question about the limits of bureaucratic rule following. While rules provide order, strict adherence can sometimes lead to unjust outcomes, especially in humanitarian crises. This example shows that a civil servant guided by Aristotle's principle would prioritize the right saving a life, even if it means bending or interpreting established rules to apply compassion. It demonstrates that ethics can and should inform the application of law.
Right. And the other example, to stand up to the political executive in the case of illegal orders, connecting back to conscience and political neutrality, why is this especially challenging and important for civil servants, risking their careers for what is right?
This requires incredible courage, as we discussed. It demands that civil servants prioritize their oath to the Constitution and their conscience over loyalty to their political masters. This is a critical check and balance in governance, ensuring that the established power of the executive does not lead to illegal or unethical actions. It's a true test of moral fortitude within the administrative system.
Definitely. Okay, finally, for the prescription section, the answer concludes with, ultimately, the quote reminds us of the principle of satyameva jayate, truth alone triumphs. Okay. So what does this all mean for you listening? How do these examples inspire you to question what is established and pursue what is truly right in your own life, even when it's difficult?
It's a powerful framework. This structure, interpretation, explanation, exemplification, prescription effectively guides you through a deep philosophical inquiry. It encourages us to think not just about what a quote says, but what it means in different contexts, from history to our own ethical choices today. Consider this. In your daily life, where do you see the tension between what is right and what is established, and how do you navigate it? It's a constant challenge.
It really is. Wow, okay. We've covered a tremendous amount in this deep dive. Let's quickly hit the highlights just to make sure these incredibly valuable insights really stick with you for the long term.
Yes, let's do a quick recap. To help activate your memory and deepen your understanding, let's go over some of the most critical takeaways we've discussed today.
Okay, first, remember the ethics landscape. We saw how major discussions consistently revolve around the ethical ideas of thinkers, ethics in public administration, the human interface and governance, accountability, and transparency. These are the key areas where ethical thought is most actively engaged.
Then we looked at the blueprint for explanations. Always think about both substance, your core argument, how you back it up, the precise language you use, and style, how you structure and present your ideas clearly. Both are crucial for truly impactful understanding, substance and style.
Right. When crafting introductions, remember you have many powerful ways to start strong, with the compelling quote, a current event or statistic, a clear definition, or your thoughtful interpretation of the question. Choose the one that best sets the stage for your specific discussion.
For core ethical concepts, we explored prejudice, rooted in ignorance, lack of contact, misinformation, and how we view in-groups versus out-groups. Remember Voltaire's sharp critique, it's what fools have for reason.
Political neutrality, essential for trust, effectiveness, and citizen welfare in administration, upheld by clear rules.
Conscience, your internal moral guide, crucial for accountability, impartiality, and resisting unethical pressures. Remember MLK Jr.'s powerful call, sometimes you must act because conscience says it's right.
A positive attitude, shaped by environment, values, inspiration. It fuels empathy, citizen-centric service, integrity. As Churchill said, a small thing making a big difference.
And the crucial distinction between ethics versus law. Not always the same. Understand the four quadrants. Ethical legal, unethical legal, ethical illegal, unethical legal. Really useful framework.
It is. Finally, we looked at some advanced strategies. For probity, which is that uncompromising honesty, remember its vital role in fighting corruption and promoting public welfare, and how it's greatly influenced by leadership by example and vision.
Always seek contemporary relevance. Connect historical teachings like Dayanand Saraswati's on education, equality, compassion to modern challenges. Make the past relevant.
And for quote analysis, use that interpretation, explanation, exemplification, prescription framework to deconstruct deep ideas like Aristotle's call to follow what is right, not just what is established.
Each of these pieces of knowledge is a vital tool in your ethical toolkit, helping you to not just understand, but to think critically and engage thoughtfully with the complex moral questions that constantly arise in the world around you.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe consider this provocative thought. If your internal moral compass of ethics and the external enforceable standard of law sometimes diverge,
Where do you ultimately draw your line? What happens when your conscience tells you one thing, but the established rules, or maybe even popular opinion, demand another? How do you decide what is truly right?
That's a deep question to ponder. We truly hope this deep dive has given you a fresh and powerful perspective on mastering ethical concepts and understanding how impactful, clear, well structured communication can be. Think about how you can apply these insights the next time you encounter a complex issue or need to explain a nuanced idea to someone. The power to be truly well informed and to articulate that understanding is now firmly at your fingertips. Thank you so much for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep digging for knowledge, keep questioning the world around you, and keep that incredible curiosity burning bright.